The economy of the nation was growing rapidly as my national sales organization grew. My business was moving forward swiftly. Now I was in a position to go back to school. First night school, then day school at the YMCA. Upon graduating from the Y, I entered Northwestern University in Evanston, where I was living. My program, a full 18-hour course with classes in the morning, a swim, steam bath, half-hour nap, lunch at the Hamilton Club shortly after noon, a few hours at the office, then home. Everything was going along fine. It was quite a life, for then we were in the boom days. But after this came the crash and the Great Depression. People were starving, suffering, jobless, homeless. Fear crippled the nation, and the wealthy became poor almost overnight. Yet out of this disaster came individual and national strength, as the negative attitudes of people were changed to positive. Enlightenment, courage, appreciation of opportunities, the will to work, and most of all, the people returned to their churches for guidance. I didn't at first realize the impact of the market crash and the economic upheavals that followed, but I saw danger signals that motivated me to action. On LaSalle Street in 1930, I'd often meet a friend, someone I admired for his business success in the late 20s. After a friendly chat, just before shaking hands to say goodbye, he would ask, by the way, Clem, can you lend me $10 until Tuesday? I'd lend him the $10, but the Tuesday he was referring to never seemed to come. These experiences made me think. For although I had a sales system that never fails me, and I had complete confidence in my ability to meet any situation that might arise, I reasoned. Even the keenest minds in the nation lost fortunes when the market crashed. Who am I not to recognize this? It's time to build cash reserves for an emergency, or be prepared to grasp a great opportunity should either arise. I wasn't what you would call the saving kind. I'd buy what I wanted, then work to pay for it. I'd increase my earnings by increasing sales, and I'd increase my personal sales by increasing my sales knowledge and skill. Every time I entered the Roanoke building, where I had my office, I was attracted by a sign in the window of the bank on the first floor, which seemed to verify this philosophy. It read, "A young man can acquire a fortune if he obligates himself, for if he is honest, he will pay off his debts." I'd obligated myself to purchase a home, 2 cars, and what I term necessities, and others might term luxuries, on time payments. Besides, I was always trying to expand my business, and the insurance companies I represented had each given me a sizable line of credit. So I forced myself to save by buying a 20-year endowment policy, the kind of life insurance that had the largest cash values. I bought a big one, big enough to make a loan of $20,000 9 years later, when both an emergency and opportunity presented itself. And I did this notwithstanding the fact that I had debts. I knew I'd pay them in full, for early in my experience, I've developed the self-motivator, a deal's a deal, and a promise is a promise. Often during the Depression years, as many as 200 applicants would call up my office on a Monday morning for a personal interview in response to the ad in the Chicago Sunday Tribune. A line would start outside the office door in the Roanoke building and extend around the entire 7th-floor hallway. Experts may scoff, but I knew then, as I know now, that I had the ability to evaluate an individual rather accurately within a few minutes. For my selling experience made me sensitive to another person's reactions and enabled me to interpret them correctly. I developed a technique that enabled me to move rapidly to select those I wished to hire and to eliminate those I thought would not qualify without making them lose face. Here's what I did. 1. Everyone was given the same literature that was sent to an applicant who applied through the mail. I didn't bother to take names and addresses of any applicant on the first interview. 2. Is he a man of character? Is his attitude positive or negative? Is he willing to learn? These were the questions I asked myself. 3. If I didn't believe an applicant qualified, I tried to be as courteous and thoughtful of his feelings as possible. I'd say, in fairness, I plan to interview everyone. Here's the literature that explains the entire plan. If you're interested, return for a second interview. I knew that few would return because of the requirement of a cash deposit, but the applicant did save face. 4. Those men I wanted, I got. My procedure was exactly the same as with the applicants I wanted to eliminate, with this exception. I'd say, read the literature and keep in mind that I'll prove to you by actual demonstration how easy it is for you to earn a large income. If the plan appeals to you, we'll get you licensed immediately. I'll do all the selling for a full day and turn the commissions over to you. Then I'd take a minute or two to tell him what large commissions I'd made on a salesman's basis the previous week. When an applicant was broke and a sales manager offered to do the work and turn the commissions over to him, he was willing to see what it was all about. Then when he received $30 to $50 in cash at the end of the first day, the opportunities were apparent. In those days, $1 was a lot of money. I had pity and compassion for the has-beens. These were men who had made from $15,000 to $30,000 a year in boom days. But they became has-beens, either because they weren't willing to start at the bottom and climb back up, or because their attitudes were so negative that any job they might take would result in failure. Their futures were behind them, unless their employers knew the art of inspiration to action. I tell these experiences because I made a great discovery. I realized that I could train the salesmen I hired by taking them out to sell and demonstrating my sales system to them. In doing this, I began to get the knowledge to develop the know-how in perfecting a success system that never fails for training salesmen, something that I didn't have before. Realizing that my sales representatives needed to receive training, I began to send out a daily one-page sales bulletin. Each contained a successful sales rebuttal or a suggestion that I had personally found effective. You see, I was selling, and I was in selling trim. In the bulletins, I told the salesman what to say and how to say it. Thus, for example, the salesman would be instructed how to make the sale to a prospect who said, "I don't have the money," even if it were necessary for the prospect to borrow the premium from his boss or a neighbor. In addition, each release contained an idea or self-motivator to inspire the salesman to action, such as, "With every disadvantage, there is always a greater advantage." Writing this material helped me crystallize my thinking on paper. It was a step toward discovering my success system that never fails in training others. My problems were small in comparison to those of others who, during the Depression, maintained a negative mental attitude. But I did have problems. Telephone calls, letters, and interviews from my creditors became quite irritating. So one day, I let my creditors know that they were going to get 100 cents on the dollar plus 6% interest from the date of the obligation. They would receive payments in proportion to my earnings. Although this was a statement of my definite decision rather than a request for permission, no one complained. In due course, all were paid in full. By the end of 1939, all the parts of the treasure map had been found by me. 1. Inspiration to action at will. 2. Know-how to acquire wealth and success. 3. Knowledge of how to build a successful and profitable business. 4. And something more, a living philosophy.